Chosen one, take your wanting to the altar each morning and bind it there with vows that make it generous. Desire without oath is weather, spectacular, changeable, dangerous when it wants to be. Desire under oath is climate, steady enough to grow things, warm enough to draw life out of hiding, clear enough that travelers can use it to keep their bearings. Let your oath be to truth, to consent, to reverence, and to usefulness. Truth keeps your flame from flattering lies. Consent keeps your flame from stealing time. Reverence keeps your flame from turning sacred things into souvenirs. Usefulness keeps your flame from mistaking performance for purpose. Under these four, heat learns its calling. Desire under oath does not apologize for existing. It chooses its direction. It stands upright rather than crouching into manipulation. It announces its edges, the way a lantern announces its glass. The glass is not shame, it is stewardship. The brightest lights the world has loved have had containers. A contained light can be carried. It can travel into rooms that would otherwise fear it. You become a bearer rather than a brand. When she meets such light, she does not brace. The nervous system can tell when heat has been taught its manners, and it relaxes the guards that were hired to prevent surprise fires. Make rituals that keep your vows oxygenated. Sleep enough that your hunger does not impersonate purpose. Work in ways that return your self-respect to you, so that you will not borrow it from bodies. Move so that you remain fluent in the language of your own limits. Pray so that power reports to meaning, and not the other way around. These rituals are not theater. They are maintenance. Maintenance is not glamorous, but it is how bridges stay up and how homes stop burning down. A maintained desire is a civilizational gift at the scale of a kiss. Let your oath be audible in your timing. You do not ask a moment to carry weight it cannot bear. You do not rush comprehension in order to certify connection. You do not drag your feet to inflate your value with scarcity. You enter when invited. You leave while gratitude still has breath to say its name, and you return with provisions rather than invoices. Provisions look like patience that does not keep score, like language that lowers friction, like plans that make tenderness practical. In this cadence, the old rumor that closeness necessarily costs freedom evaporates. Freedom remains dressed and respected in your field. Closeness becomes a choice rather than a rescue. Refine your yes and your no until they are sacramental. A yes under oath does not swagger. It fits the grain of your real capacity and then quietly exceeds it through devotion. A no under oath is not cold. It is warm medicine given at the right dose. It protects the field from floods and keeps fruit from rotting on the branch. When both syllables keep their vows, trust grows like ivy over the architecture of the day. Ivy does not hurry. It covers what deserves shade, softens what was hard, and makes even old walls look like part of a living thing. Guard your motive from the cheap magic of leverage. Influence that leans on hunger to get what it wants becomes a tax collector in the temple of intimacy. You will not charge entry. You refuse to negotiate someone into consent by starving them of attention and selling it back at the door. Your desire does not win, it invites. Invitations that can be refused without penalty are the only ones worth accepting. The body knows this. It hears the difference between a hand extended and a contract slid across the table. Under oath, your hand is the first and never the second. Train your absence to serve your oath. Absence used as theater inflates the price of your presence and insults intelligence. Absence used as practice returns with bread. Step away to cool your heat so it warms without scorching. Step away to learn a craft that will make tomorrow's tenderness easier. Language that untangles, competence that lowers friction, discernment that names things without stabbing them. When you return, you do not arrive louder, you arrive clearer. Clarity is the only volume that never goes out of style. It is the sound safety makes when it speaks. Treat repair as liturgy. Even vows need maintenance. If your desire forgets its oath and reaches faster than comprehension, say so without a sermon that makes you the victim of your own heat. If your words outrun your reverence, bring them back and let them apologize at a human height. If your presence taxes rather than nourishes, leave and return with provision. These small sacraments keep holiness from becoming theater and keep love from becoming law. In a life where repair is dependable, vigilance retires and walls fall into conversation with the ivy, Keep usefulness ahead of spectacle. Spectacle can dazzle the eye while starving the day. Usefulness looks plain and ends up feeding 10,000. Be the one who carries chairs before carrying claims, who turns the phone face down because eyes are temples, who says the time aloud so hope does not have to guess, who keeps the sink clear so tomorrow does not inherit today's mess. When desire kneels to usefulness, it becomes unmistakably safe. Safe does not mean dull. It means bright without residue. It means the kind of light the soul can read by. Let reverence be visible even in play. Play is proof that your heat does not require harm to feel alive. Laugh at a pitch that loosens knots without fraying the rope. Tease in a way that never borrows knives. Dance at a speed that keeps refusals sovereign and yes, radiant. Where play and reverence share a room, joy learns it does not need to justify itself with productivity, and grief learns it does not need to impersonate a lesson to be welcomed. Such rooms are where walls misplace their arguments and never bother to look for them again. Finally, remember what the oath is for. It is not to make you smaller. It is to make your warmth survivable. It is not to erase desire. It is to give it a direction worthy of both your names. Under oath, your wanting matures from hunger into hospitality, from pressure into presence, from conquest into covenant. In that maturation, she discovers that to be desired by you is to be safer, not smaller, freer, not managed, brighter, not burned. The fortress that once spent its days calculating how to outlast a siege simply opens its windows. Dawn walks in without ceremony. You did not scale the wall, you changed the weather. Chosen one, let your clarity become a place that can be entered without the body having to bargain away any part of itself. Temple is not marble first. It is light you do not have to translate. Make your inner rooms bright enough that even your shadows are honest. Before you speak, allow your breath to polish the glass of intention until it stops fogging at the edges. A fogged intention is a corridor that curves just enough to make someone wonder what waits around the bend. A clear intention is a straight aisle to an altar where nothing is sold and nothing is stolen. When she steps into such radiance, her shoulders measure the air and realize it is not carrying a price tag. Walls that learn to listen for hidden fees begin to forget their arithmetic. Transparency begins with admitting that desire lives here and that it has learned its manners. You do not smuggle wanting into the hour disguised as friendship so it can collect interest on unspoken hope. You do not launder yearning through compliments so it can pass for charity. You let the truth stand straightforward and clothed. I am drawn. I am careful. I am under vow. Drawn tells the body, this is not a negotiation conducted by flattery. Careful tells the heart, it will not be rushed for proof. Vow tells the soul there is someone higher in the room than appetite. Where this trinity presides, ambiguity loses its business model. The nervous system, trained to parse mixed signals as weather alerts, hears instead the calm report of a clear sky. Make your words stack like stones that carry weight, not like banners that wait for wind. If you will call, say when. If you cannot, say why. If you are unsure, say so, and protect her dignity with that uncertainty rather than inflating yourself with borrowed confidence. Truth spoken before it is convenient is the incense of this temple. It smells like wood smoke on a winter morning, evidence that a hearth has been tended since long before visitors arrived. The body trusts evidence it can feel. Feeling trust, the guard dogs lie down. They do not need to be fought. They only need to be relieved. Transparency also means showing the scaffolding behind your gentleness. Many have learned to distrust manners because they have watched men weaponize politeness to buy time for dominance. Show the beams. Explain your pace without performing innocence. Name the boundary before anyone bumps into it, and then guard it yourself so she does not have to. Admit where your history is tender so you will not be tempted to act out tenderness as theater. Declare your intention to leave the room cleaner than you found it, and prove it with clean exits, messages returned, gratitude made specific, confusion named while it is still small enough to be mended without headlines. Such housekeeping is holiness in civilian clothes. Practice eye contact that shines like water, not like a searchlight. Water receives images and returns them without distortion. Searchlights interrogate. Look in a way that returns ownership to the one beheld. If your gaze cannot do this yet, let it learn. The eyes are the temple doors. Doors that swing on honest hinges do not creak. They do not stick when no is spoken. They do not slam when yes is shy. They open to reveal a place where her voice can echo without being counted, and where her silence can sit without being questioned. In such acoustics, confession stops needing to perform as entertainment and begins to function as truth-telling. Truth does not fear architecture, it asks for it. Transparency is not the exhibitionism of wounds, it is the clean lineage of motives. You are not obligated to show every scar. You are obligated to stop using bandages as decoration. If you bring a story, bring it because it serves understanding, not because it auditions for sympathy. If you withhold a detail, withhold it to protect what is ripening, not to hoard power. This discernment makes the temple safe for both revelation and privacy. Privacies guarded with reverence will eventually volunteer themselves when the weather is right. Nothing that is hurried into the light arrives ready to survive there. Speak your terms of tenderness as if you were drafting a treaty that will keep both kingdoms flourishing. You are not publishing a list of demands, you are sharing a map that prevents collisions. I move slowly here, I laugh loudly there. I need a moment when I am surprised. I will check in after we cross thresholds. Each sentence becomes a pillar that keeps the roof from sagging under weather. Under a roof that does not sag, people stop looking for exit signs and start noticing the art on the walls. They stop guarding their cup and begin drinking. The taste they cannot name is relief. Make transparency audible in your after. After you have laughed, is the room still bigger than before? After you have touched, does her breath deepen rather than shorten? After you have said no, does respect remain upright without needing to be escorted? After you leave, does silence feel like rest rather than like a cliff? The temple is judged by the air in its vestibule. Most harm shouts on the way in and whispers on the way out. You do the reverse. You enter as if the space is already sacred and exit as if someone else will pray here when you are gone. Let honesty become choreography. Do not step closer when clarity asks you to hold. Do not step back when clarity invites you to stay. Announce transitions before you take them so motion does not read as mood. If weather inside you shifts, name the cloud instead of pretending the sun never leaves your sky. People do not need perpetual summer. They need reliable seasons. Reliability frees a soul to wear the right coat to the day, rather than pretending that goose flesh is glamour. When pretending retires, walls quietly follow. And keep the temple funded by repair. When you misspeak, let your apology arrive with measurements. What happened, what it cost, what will be different. Spare everyone the theater of shame. Spend yourself on the labor of change. Smart stonework hums when you touch it. Edges sanded, joints tight, weight distributed. Your words can learn to hum that way. When they do, the most defensive part of her, trained to spot cracks in structures that claim to be safe, relaxes the way a traveler relaxes when a bridge does not shake. She will cross without counting steps. She will return without counting reasons. Transparency has made walls superfluous. Chosen one, carry chairs before you carry claims. Make usefulness the first language your presence speaks, so that spark, when it arrives, lands in a room already built to host it without burning down. Spectacle can set hearts racing for a night. Service sets tables where hunger stops being entertainment. When you enter, ask the hour what would lower its cost. More attention in that corner, less hurry in this one. A sentence sturdy enough to carry meaning across a difficult span. A pause wide enough for gratitude to land. Do those small labors without announcing their virtue. Announcements are cheaper than carpentry. Carpentry lasts. Service begins in the commons. Sinks, schedules, doorways, the small logistics that decide whether tenderness will be a luxury or a rhythm. Turn the phone face down when a human is turned face up. Name the time you have so hope does not have to guess. Leave a conversation with enough air that memory can carry it without strain. Return with bread instead of invoices. Bread looks like patience warm enough to share, like words sharpened and softened in the same breath, like a plan that respects both spontaneity and rest. Romance is not allergic to such chores. It is starved for them. In a culture that sells fireworks, the steady glow of a well-tended lamp becomes irresistible. Make competence holy. Not the competence that brags about being busy, but the competence that lowers friction. Friction taxes every intimacy. It makes small moments expensive. Reduce the tax. Keep your promises small enough to keep, and then quietly exceed them. Confirm what needs confirming without making reassurance into a leash. Anticipate where confusion might grow mold and wipe it down before it spreads. If a hinge squeals, on the door of a boundary, on the gate of a plan, oil it. If the map is unclear, redraw it with verbs sturdy enough to walk on. The unspectacular mercy of these acts frees energy to become joy rather than defense. Freed energy paints faces in a light everyone mistakes for beauty. Let your hands apprentice your heart. Carry what is heavy without asking the room to applaud your strength. Fix what is crooked without telling a story that makes you the hero of level surfaces. Repair before you explain. Where something broke under your weight, do not build a courtroom, build a workbench. Replace the screw that came loose, reset the hinge, sand the edge that left a splinter. Then do the quieter repair. Replace the pattern that produced the break. Service that stops at objects flatters you. Service that changes your habits blesses her. Blessed, she spends less on vigilance and more on living. Living looks like laughter you did not have to earn. Replace performance with stewardship. Performance is a thirst trap for attention. Stewardship is a canal for goodness. Ask, what flow is needed here? Sometimes it is levity to loosen a knot. Sometimes it is accuracy to keep the trellis square. Sometimes it is a refusal to monetize mystery into a narrative you can brag about later. Keep watching the water. Divert it before it floods. Direct it before it stagnates. She will not necessarily note every engineering choice you make. She will notice that in your company, her spirit does not have to sand its feet to walk safely. That noticing is affection's honest origin. Be early to the labor that seems beneath titles. Pick up the cups, wipe the counter, reset the chair, send the note that says exactly what was good, instead of drafting an essay that keeps you central. The smallest acts are the ones the nervous system believes first. Anyone can promise to carry a future. Only a servant carries the moment in front of them without fanfare. In such environments, spark stops needing to audition as a miracle. It becomes the expected companion of responsibility, the way a fire chooses wood that has been cut, stacked, and kept dry. If a conflict arises, practice the economics of de-escalation. Enthusiasm about being right is the oldest accelerant. Choose to be accurate instead. Accuracy asks fewer words to do better work. It separates the heat worth keeping from the smoke worth venting. It acknowledges the bruise without litigating personality. It recommends rest when adrenaline tries to call for a duel. When you do this, the room learns that raised voices are not a currency here. Trust deposits itself quietly in the walls. Walls that hold trust need not hold people. Time your service so that it feels like music rather than management. Too late, and it becomes apology in costume. Too early, and it becomes control with a smile. Learn the tempo of this particular heart. When she needs space, give it generously and show your generosity by how you greet her when she returns. No ledger, no intonation that sells scarcity as value. When she needs closeness, bring presence that can actually carry weight, attention that does not drift, warmth that does not invoice, humor that never borrows knives. Done like this, service is rhythm. And rhythm is what lets dancing happen without instruction. Keep your absence legible. Leaving to inflate your price is theater. Leaving to gather provisions is love. Step away to refill the storehouse, language that simplifies, patience that lengthens, a craft that will ease the next day's burden. Announce your departure in human sentences. Give a return window you can keep. Come back with bread. Bread convinces faster than myth. She will not call you a mystery. She will call you dependable, and the word will feel like sunlight, not boredom, because dependability is the one luxury that makes every other joy affordable. Let gratitude be the signature on all your service, not the noisy gratitude that demands to be seen being grateful, but the quiet sort that touches the edge of a task and whispers, "What a privilege to make this easier." Privilege here does not mean power over. It means proximity to purpose. Purpose makes men handsome without them trying. A face that is at peace with its usefulness carries a brightness angles cannot counterfeit. Rooms soften around such faces. People settle. Settled people are generous with their light. And remember, chosen one, why service comes first. Spark without service is a match in dry grass, momentary, memorable, destructive. Service without spark is a furnace in a locked basement, useful, invisible, under-celebrated. The chosen ones marry the two. They bring the furnace upstairs and build a hearth. They keep wood dry and chairs pulled close. They tend flame until story begins to gather, until laughter finds a lower register, until breath stops counting itself to stay safe. In that home, her walls do not need to patrol doorways. The doors are watched by love, and the windows open toward a future that does not ask anyone to vanish to be welcome. Chosen one. Romance that cannot repair is only theater with better lighting. It dazzles, then sends the body home to clean up alone. You are learning a truer choreography, the way closeness finds its breath again after a misstep, the way affection becomes sturdier because it has learned the grammar of mending. The purity behind your desire is not a claim that you will never miss a cue. It is a vow that when you do, you will return with thread and patience, not speeches and smoke. Purity enters a room of tension the way a careful artisan enters a workshop at dawn, setting tools in their places, turning on honest light, refusing to let pride touch the materials. Begin by believing that harm wants honesty more than heroics. When your tone lands too sharp, do not gild it with explanations that make you the main character in the injury. When timing turns careless and crowds another's breath, do not erect a courtroom to argue context. Call the bruise by its name. Ask the wound what altitude of apology lets dignity breathe. Then answer with measurements, not metaphors. I spoke over you. I will practice silence before sentences. I arrived empty and asked you to feed my worth. I will feed myself where it is my job to do so. I left a mess in the corridor of our plans. I have swept, and here is how the plan has been reheard. Romance recognizes itself in such simplicity. Where explanation performs, repair works. Let your amends be made of actions that survive weather. Flowers wilt, changed habits find roots. If you have been late to the work of listening, set alarms in your living that ring before the moment requires them. If impatience has been your preferred anesthetic, learn the small ritual of stepping outside, letting winter air untie the knot, returning warm without burning. If jealousy has dressed itself in the uniform of vigilance, reassign it to inventory where it will count gratitude instead of keeping score of ghosts. In each reallocation, the nervous system notices that the old patrol has been relieved by competence. Competence is quiet. It does not brag. Walls listen for that quiet the way night creatures listen for morning. Treat details as altars. Injuries are often small doors to large rooms. A forgotten message is not just an oversight. It can be a signal that memory is being outsourced to adrenaline. A flinch at a certain phrase is not melodrama. It can be the echo of a corridor where footsteps once meant danger. Repair kneels at these altars, lights a candle of attention, and asks, "What is sacred here that I failed to see?" Your desire, under oath, refuses to rush this liturgy. It prefers accuracy to speed, relief to performance. Accuracy makes room for tenderness to return without needing to audition. Relief teaches the body that closeness will not be purchased with the currency of self-betrayal. Time matters. Apology delivered too late becomes archaeology. Delivered too early, it can be a strategy to avoid feeling the weight of consequence. You learn the hour's heartbeat. You wait long enough to understand exactly what cracked, but not long enough for the crack to become a canyon. When you finally speak, you use words like lumber, cut to fit, sanded of splinters, ready to bear load. And after you speak, you stay for the inspection. Staying is the quietest form of romance, the willingness to let the one you love test the bridge you've rebuilt at their own pace. Bridges that hum underfoot are trusted. Bridges that boast are suspect. Hum is the music of integrity. Practice aftercare for truth. After a hard conversation, make tea. Lower the volume of your own righteousness. Leave the room with clean lines so the next hour does not inherit jagged edges. After intimacy, check the windows of consent and comprehension. Tuck in the shy places that emerged. Return ownership with your gaze before you return silence with your body. After an argument resolves, do not call victory a virtue. Call understanding a gift and protect it with a plan. Small, ordinary, boring in the most holy sense. Boredom in the aftermath is the sign of a well-built structure. Nothing dramatic is required to keep the roof from leaking. Learn the craft of re-entry. To repair is not only to say sorry, it is to come back differently. Absence that inflates your price is theater. Absence that gathers provisions is love. Step away to cool your flame so its warmth will be steady. Step away to learn a phrase that removes friction. Step away to return with bread. Bread is proof. It says you spent your time becoming more useful, not more legendary. When you walk through the door with usefulness in your hands, the guard at the gate of her body stands down without being commanded. Guards are tired of being at war with declarations. They respond to provisions like a winter woodpile responds to the sound of a well-honed axe. Kintsugi is not just a metaphor, it is a method. Where a bowl cracked, the artist does not pretend it never broke. Gold joins the line, not to show off, but to make the vessel stronger at the very place it once failed. Apply gold where your patterns broke. If the break was caused by speed, pour patience along the seam every time that context repeats. If the break was caused by hiding, pour transparency with the same consistency you once poured charm. If the break was caused by isolation dressed as independence, pour interdependence without turning it into dependence. Over time, the repaired places gleam, not because you display them, but because the light catches where you chose to tell the truth. Keep repair close to play. Do not make your shared life a workshop where nothing can be used until it is perfect. Use the room. Scuff the floor with dancing. Let laughter put its elbows on the table. But when a chair wobbles, do not laugh instead of fixing it. Tighten the bolt. Show her that tenderness does not have to choose between joy and maintenance. When joy knows a wrench is always within reach, it relaxes. Relaxed joy is the kind that lasts after the music is off. Refuse penance that centers you. Penance that performs is another kind of leverage. You do not purchase forgiveness with grand gestures. You earn trust with small consistencies. You do not insist on immediate absolution. You build conditions where absolution becomes unnecessary next time. You do not narrate your growth so loudly that the one you hurt must now comfort your effort. You simply keep the covenant, to be a place before you are a proof, to be repairable before you are romantic, to be accurate before you are admired. In this covenant, walls lose their occupation. They do not need to patrol a city that keeps its streets lit and its bridges honest. Finally, let repair alter your desire itself. Wanting that has passed through accountability becomes gentler without losing heat, humbler without losing strength. It looks at the beloved and thinks not, how do I get more of what I want, but how do I become more of what our good requires? In that conversion, your longing becomes a guardian instead of a guest. Guardians do not hammer on doors. They keep thresholds clean. Guests come and go. Guardians remain. Remaining is the romance that rewrites the lineage of fear with a quieter script. She hears the new lines, and her walls, relieved to be unneeded, sit down like old soldiers at the edge of a meadow and let the grass grow through their fingers. Chosen one, the end of all this mending and clarity is not simply peace. It is purpose that lets peace keep its home. There is a rest that comes from exhaustion, and there is a rest that comes from alignment. You are apprenticing yourself to the second. Alignment gathers your desire, your duty, your faith, and your craft onto one cord and pulls in the same direction. Pulled thus, your present stops asking rooms to fund your momentum. It brings its own engine. The feminine rests in that engine the way a traveler rests in a train that runs on time, not because the scenery is always gentle, but because the direction is honest and the pace is humane. Purpose, carried rightly, is not a stage, it is a field. In a field, people can move at their own stride, harvest what is ripe, leave what is still green to the sun, and lie down without apologizing to the sky. Your field is kept by rituals that do not wear costumes, sleep guarded against the trespass of vanity, work done for usefulness rather than myth, learning treated as a river and not a trophy, prayer treated as oxygen and not an argument. These are not glamorous, but they glow. Glow is the hush that falls when a structure makes sense. In such hush, her nervous system loosens its grip on the reins it took from history. The horse remembers it was made to carry joy. Rest does not mean the absence of intensity, it means intensity under governance. Your heat becomes a hearth for shared meaning, not a wildfire that demands admiration. You set your warmth to the work of making life survivable and then sweet, paying attention to the commons where romance either thrives or withers. The sink that thanks tomorrow, the schedule that tells the truth, the doorway that blesses each leaving, so each return need not perform. When the commons are tended, the private becomes generous. The sacred does not need to prove itself by burning through the ordinary, it sanctifies it. Make room for Sabbath inside motion. Sabbath is not idleness, it is refusal to mortgage the soul to productivity. You keep one hand on the plow and one hand on the pulse. If the pulse quickens past comprehension, you slow. If the plow bites into stone, you lift it and consider a new furrow rather than breaking the tool to prove a point. This refusal to injure the hour for the sake of your plan turns purpose from a tyrant into a shepherd. She can nap in fields governed by shepherds. Sleep on cheeks is the most ancient beauty. It cannot be faked with angles or filters. It is the signature of safety that has stayed.